I'm sitting in my study, watching 4 screens at once. Hidden cameras, each feeding me a different angle of my property. On the main screen, the queen of green living, in her $120,000 Cybertruck, has just rolled over the first set of spike strips. Her live stream, broadcasting to 50,000 loyal followers, just captured the deafening pop of 4 off-road tires exploding simultaneously. By the end of this story, she won't just lose the truck. She's going to lose her career, her real estate empire, and the carefully constructed mask of positivity she's been hiding behind for years. But how did we get here? What could possibly drive a father to set a steel trap in his own daughter's therapy garden? It started, as these things often do, with a piece of land and a promise. My name is Leo. I'm 38. I did 6 years in the Army Corps of Engineers. These days, my full-time job is being a dad. This farm has been in my family for 3 generations. It's where I grew up, and it's where I'm raising my daughter, Maya. Maya, she's my whole world. A car accident a few years back took her ability to walk, but it never touched her spirit. She's the toughest soldier I've ever known. This farm isn't just our home, it's our sanctuary, especially Maya's garden. After I got out of the service, I spent a solid year building it for her. Every single detail was designed with her in mind. The pathways are wide and smooth, paved with fine gravel that her wheelchair glides over. The planter beds are raised to the perfect height, so she can reach in and tend to her lavender and mint without straining. There's a whole section dedicated to attracting butterflies and hummingbirds. It's her sacred space, the one place on earth where she can forget the chair and just be a 10-year-old kid with her hands in the dirt. It is the most valuable thing I own. Our piece ended on a Tuesday morning. I was out with Maya, helping her check on the tomato plants when I heard a strange sound. Not the familiar rumble of a tractor or a pickup. This was a low, electric hum. And then I saw it. A sterile white Cybertruck, looking like something that had crash-landed from a bad sci-fi movie, was making its way down my grandfather's old service path. That path is fully on my property, not 20 yards from Maya's garden. The property next door had just sold. A development company called Serenity Woods was putting up some kind of high-end, eco-friendly housing community. I figured this must be the new owner. Probably just took a wrong turn, that's what I thought, the first time. The second time was the next day. This time I walked out to meet them. The driver's side door swung up, and a woman emerged. She looked like she'd been assembled in an Instagram filter. Mid-40s, maybe, with the kind of smooth, unmoving forehead that only expensive injections can provide, giving her a permanent look of mild surprise. She was dressed in head-to-toe white Lululemon that had probably never seen a real workout. "Hi there," she chirped, her voice dripping with a practiced, syrupy sweetness. "I'm Brenda, the founder of Serenity Woods. This land is just amazing. The energy here is so pure." "Hi," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm Leo. This is private property. That path you're on, it's part of my farm. You can't drive through here." Her smile didn't falter, it just became hollower. "Oh, I totally get that," she said, waving a dismissive hand, a massive Rolex glinting on her wrist. "But you see, this path is a natural, energy ley line. It connects our parcel to the main road in the most harmonious way. Blocking it would disrupt the whole area's flow. Besides, our community is all about nature access. Think of it as a community right-of way." I felt my eyebrows try to crawl up into my hairline. "A community right-of-way? There's no easement on my deed. This is my land." She let out a small, tinkling laugh, the kind of sound meant to be charming but just came across as condescending. "Oh, you military guys, so rigid. Lighten up. We're neighbors. Let's share in nature's abundance, okay?" And with that, she slid back into her space-age pickup, drove around me, and continued on her way. She left me standing there, speechless at the sheer, weaponized audacity of it all. I realized then this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a declaration. Brenda didn't stop. In fact, she incorporated my service path into her sales pitch. A couple of times a day, the silent white wedge would glide past the garden. Sometimes she'd stop, get out with a well-heeled couple in tow, and walk around on my land, pointing and gesturing, acting like they were in a public park. I was too far away to hear the words, but I could see them, nodding along as she sold them on the unobstructed views and the private walking trail to the creek. My creek. I started filming everything. My phone became an extension of my hand. I documented dates, times, license plates, the number of people she brought with her. I had a sick feeling in my stomach that I was going to need a mountain of evidence. Maya started getting anxious. "Dad, why does that lady keep coming here?" she'd ask, her small brow furrowed. "Doesn't she like our garden?" I did my best to reassure her, telling her it was just a grown-up mix-up I was sorting out. But deep down, I was asking the same question. Her presence felt like a violation, a constant, humming threat on the edge of our quiet life. I decided a more direct approach was needed. Words had failed. Maybe a physical sign would get the message through. I spent an afternoon in my workshop, pulling out a solid piece of oak. I sanded it down, rooted the edges, and painted, in big, blocky, impossible-to-miss red letters, "Private property, no trespassing." Underneath, I added, "VIOLATORS will be PROSSUTED." It was big, it was clear, it was unambiguous. I dug 2 deep post holes right at the entrance to the path, mixed a bag of concrete for each, and set the sign. It was solid, unmissable. I stood back admiring my work. There, let's see her ignore that. I was wrong, so wrong. The next morning, I was fixing a loose board on the porch when I heard the hum. The Cybertruck approached the sign. It paused for a second, maybe 2. Then, with a casual indifference that made my blood run cold, Brenda turned the wheel, drove her truck onto the grass to go around the sign, and then merged back onto the path. She didn't even glance at it. It was like I had planted a decorative garden gnome. The blatant disrespect, the absolute certainty that the rules simply didn't apply to her, was staggering. This had moved beyond ignorance or entitlement. This was a power play. That evening, a friend who lived down the road sent me a screenshot. It was from Brenda's Instagram page, where she operated under the handle Brenda Serenity Living and had a following of nearly 2 million people. Her latest post was a stock photo of a lotus flower with a caption written over it. "When you encounter blocked energy, send it love and light. Some people build walls, others build bridges. Choose to be a bridge builder. Sparkles positive vibes, manifesting harmony." She hadn't used my name, but she didn't have to. The message was crystal clear. In her narrative, I was the blocked energy. I was the wall builder. She was the enlightened soul trying to overcome my negativity. And the comments section was a tidal wave of toxic positivity. "So inspiring, Brenda. You are a beacon of light. Don't let the haters dim your sparkle." Hundreds of them from people all over the world, praising her for her wisdom while she was, in reality, bragging about breaking the law and disrespecting a private citizen. I wasn't just up against a woman in a ridiculous truck anymore. I was up against a brand. And I was being tried and convicted in the court of her online opinion. A sign wasn't enough. Words were useless. It was time for a physical barrier she couldn't just drive around. I spent the entire weekend installing a chain-link fence across the path. It wasn't pretty, but it was functional. I sank steel posts deep into the ground with concrete footers. I stretched the heavy-gauge wire tight and secured it. In the middle, I installed a gate, which I then fastened shut with a thick, industrial-grade padlock. The kind you'd need serious bolt cutters to get through. As I snapped the lock shut, I felt a wave of relief. Finally, a boundary she couldn't just ignore or philosophize her way through. Maya wheeled herself out to see it. Her face, usually so bright, was pinched with worry. "Is she going to stop now, Daddy?" she asked, her voice small. "Yes, sweetie," I told her, putting my hand on her shoulder. "Now your garden is safe." I wish I had been right. For 2 days there was peace. No silent white truck, no guided tour on my land. I started to relax, thinking foolishly that I'd won. On the 3rd morning, I went out with my coffee to check the fence line, just to be sure. My heart sank into my boots. The padlock was still there, untouched and gleaming in the morning sun, but the fence itself was not. Someone had used a pair of heavy-duty bolt cutters and had snipped through the chain links on either side of the lock. A clean, precise cut. They hadn't bothered to break the lock. They had simply dismembered the fence around it. The gate was pulled aside, and a fresh set of tire tracks, wide and distinct, were pressed deep into the damp earth, leading straight through the gap. She hadn't just trespassed. She had intentionally, willfully destroyed my property to do it. This was no longer a civil dispute. This was criminal damage. And to add insult to injury, to rub my face in her contempt, she went online. This time it was a blog post on the official Serenity Woods website. The title was Overcoming Obstacles, Turning Walls into Gateways. She wrote in her infuriatingly vague and pseudo-spiritual prose about how the universe sometimes places physical tests in our path to check our resolve, and praised the courage it takes to remove artificial barriers that impede the natural flow. She was boasting, bragging about a crime, dressing it up in $5 philosophy and using it as marketing content. She was openly mocking me. That was it. I called the sheriff's department. A deputy came out, a young guy named Miller. He seemed sympathetic. I showed him the snipped fence, the tire tracks that perfectly matched the Cybertruck's unique tread, and I showed him the blog post on my phone. He nodded slowly, took notes in a little pad. "I understand your frustration, Mr. Davis," he said, his voice laced with a weary professionalism. "I really do. But honestly, my hands are tied here. You don't have a video of her actually cutting the fence. She'll just say someone else did it. The blog post is too vague to be a confession. In the eyes of the law, right now, this is your word against hers. It's still technically a civil matter." A civil matter. My property was destroyed. My daughter's sanctuary was under constant threat. And the law, the very system designed to protect people like me, was shrugging its shoulders. The deputy was nice enough, but the message was clear. I was on my own. And my enemy had just made it clear she would stop at nothing. The next week was a Cold War. Brenda continued to drive through the busted fence, sometimes giving me a little wave as she passed. I didn't repair it. I was busy making other plans. But before I could put my plan into motion, she made a move I could never have anticipated. She delivered a blow aimed directly at my heart. It was a Saturday morning. Maya and I have a ritual. We go out to the garden first thing, while the dew is still heavy on the leaves, and we see what new flowers have opened overnight. It's our quiet time. I was pushing Maya's chair along the gravel path, listening to her chatter excitedly about a ladybug she'd spotted on a sunflower leaf. The world felt right. Then she stopped. Her happy chatter died in her throat. Her wheelchair came to an abrupt halt. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice trembling. I followed her gaze, and my world tilted on its axis. Someone had driven into the garden, not just clipped the edge. They had intentionally steered off the path and plowed straight through a section of it. The wide, unmistakable tracks of the Cybertruck were carved into the soft earth like scars. They ran directly over the raised bed of lavender and mint that Maya had been so proud of, crushing the fragrant plants into a pulpy green mess. The smooth gravel path, the one I'd spent weeks leveling for her chair, was gouged and rutted. A small, handcrafted bird bath lay shattered in pieces. Maya didn't scream or shout, she just stared, and then I heard a sound that broke me. A small, hitching sob. A single tear tracked its way through the faint layer of dirt on her cheek, then another. My Maya, my tough-as-nails daughter who never cried during painful physical therapy sessions, who faced down needles and doctors with a stoicism that humbled me, was weeping over her ruined flowers. In that instant, every ounce of restraint, every thought of de-escalation, every civilized impulse in my body evaporated. It was replaced by something cold and hard and absolute. This was no longer about land, or a path, or a fence. She had crossed a line that no one gets to cross. She had attacked my daughter. She had violated her sanctuary. She had made my little girl cry. The game was over. This was a declaration of war, and in this war I would take no prisoners. I knelt down beside her chair and wrapped my arms around her shaking shoulders. I wiped her tears with my thumb. "It's okay, baby girl," I said, my own voice thick and unfamiliar. "Daddy's going to fix this, I promise you. I'll make the garden even more beautiful than it was before. And I promise you, that woman will never, ever hurt you or your garden again." It wasn't a comfort, it was a vow, and a soldier never breaks his vow. The first call I made was not to the police. I already knew that was a dead end. I called a man named Arthur Henderson, a local lawyer my father had used for years. Arthur was in his late 70s, a throwback to an era when lawyers were counselors, not just billable hours. His office smelled of old books and pipe tobacco. He listened patiently, without interruption, as I laid out the entire saga, from the first appearance of the Cybertruck to the tears in Maya's eyes that morning. When I finished, he leaned back in his creaky leather chair and steepled his fingers. Leo, he began, his voice a low rumble. What you have here is a classic case of harassment and escalating trespass. Legally, you are in the right. Morally, you are in the right. Practically you are in a bind. He explained the grim reality. We could file a lawsuit. It would cost me, at a minimum, $20,000 or $30,000 I didn't have. It would take a year, maybe two, to see a courtroom. In the meantime, Brenda could file counterclaims, bog the whole thing down in motions and discovery, and continue to do exactly as she pleased. The law is a mill that grinds slowly, he told me, and it grinds exceedingly fine, but sometimes the wicked can afford more grist than the righteous. This is just my perspective on the situation, of course, and not a substitute for formal legal advice tailored to your own circumstances. So what do I do, Arthur? I asked, the frustration raw in my voice. Just let her run over my life. No, he said, leaning forward. His eyes, usually gentle, had a glint in them. You protect your property vigorously. The law is very clear on a landowner's right to defend their property against trespassers, provided you give them adequate and repeated warning. You've done that with the sign. You've done that with the fence. You've tried to involve law enforcement. You have a documented pattern of her willful disregard for your boundaries. He pulled a dusty law book from the shelf. The key, he said, tapping a page with a liver-spotted finger, is to create a situation where the trespasser is fully and completely aware of the potential consequences of their actions. You can't set a trap intended to cause bodily harm. But to protect your property from a vehicle, after repeated, documented warnings, the law is more flexible. He didn't tell me what to do. He didn't have to. He just showed me the door, and I knew exactly which way to go. He sent me a bill for 1 hour of his time. It was the best $150 I've ever spent. That night after Maya was asleep, I declared war from my desk. I named it Operation Tiny Tornado. My enemy had a brand, a platform, and an army of online followers. I had a background in military engineering, a deep understanding of defensive fortifications, and a righteous fury that burned like a furnace. My first move was to upgrade my surveillance. I ordered 4 small, weatherproof, motion-activated cameras. They weren't cheap, but they were an investment in the truth. I spent the next evening placing them strategically. One was hidden in a birdhouse, aimed directly at the entrance to the path. Another was tucked into the thick foliage of an old oak tree, giving me a wide shot of the garden and the path. A third was mounted low, concealed by a rock, aimed at tire level. The fourth was a high-angle shot from the eaves of my barn. Any vehicle coming down that path would be captured from every conceivable angle. Next, I went online and did some shopping. I found a company in Texas that specialized in vehicle control systems for private security and law enforcement. I ordered 4 sets of hollow spike tire deflation devices. These weren't the cheap plastic things you see in movies. These were military-grade steel, designed not just to puncture a tire, but to embed in the rubber and allow the air to escape in a controlled but rapid manner. They were brutally effective, and according to the legal precedents Arthur had alluded to, perfectly legal to use on your own property to prevent vehicular trespass, provided you post explicit warnings. And oh, I was going to post warnings. I went to a local print shop and had 10 signs made. They were large, metal, and printed in the kind of aggressive red and black lettering used for high-voltage warnings. They read, "Warning, private property, no trespassing, severe tire damage DEVICES in use. TRESPSSERS assume all risk and liability." The next phase of the operation was psychological. Arthur drafted a formal cease and desist letter. It was a masterpiece of legal prose. It detailed every single incident with dates and times. It mentioned the destruction of the fence and the damage to the garden. It stated in no uncertain terms that any further incursion onto my property by Brenda or any agent of her company would be met with the full force of the law, and that defensive measures were now in place to protect the property from vehicular damage. We sent it via certified mail requiring her signature. This wasn't to scare her, it was to provoke her. I knew a woman like Brenda wouldn't see a legal letter as a warning. She'd see it as a challenge from the rigid military guy. It would wound her ego, and her ego was about to be her downfall. I spent the next 2 days setting the stage. I installed the new warning signs every 10 feet along the property line near the path. It was a forest of red and black warnings. No one, not even the most oblivious person on the planet, could claim they hadn't been warned. I repaired the garden, replanting the lavender and mint, laying new gravel. I wanted everything to look peaceful, normal, the calm before the storm. Then I waited. The signed receipt for the certified letter came back. The bait was in the water. I monitored the cameras, my heart thumping a steady, determined rhythm. For 3 days, nothing. I started to wonder if, impossibly, the letter had actually worked. On the 4th day, I saw it, the notification on my phone. Motion detected at Zone 1. I pulled up the camera feed. There it was, the white Cybertruck gleaming arrogantly in the afternoon sun. And Brenda wasn't just driving through. She had her phone mounted on the dash. She was live streaming. I'm in my study, the 4 camera feeds glowing in the dim light. I bring the live stream up on my main monitor and turn up the volume. Brenda's face fills the screen. It's a mask of serene condescension. "Okay, my beautiful souls," she coos to her audience. "I wanted to bring you all along on this journey today because it's a powerful teaching moment. We've been talking a lot about overcoming blockages and manifesting your desired reality. Well, right here." She pans the camera to show the path ahead, deliberately avoiding the forest of warning signs, "is a physical representation of a blockage. The owner of this land, a very rigid individual, is trying to build a wall, both literally and energetically." My hands clench into fists under the desk. She's using me as a content point for her self-help garbage. "He sent me this very aggressive letter," she continues, holding up Arthur's cease and desist, then crumpling it with theatrical flair and tossing it onto the passenger seat. "But we don't respond to negative energy with more negative energy, do we? No, we send it love, we flow around it, we become the bridge. So today, we are going to consciously choose to drive this path, to keep this beautiful energy ley line open for the entire community of Serenity Woods." She turns the phone back to her face, a beatific smile plastered on. "It's about standing in your truth and not letting anyone's fear-based limitations stop you from connecting with Mother Earth. Let's do this." She puts the truck in gear. The electric motor hums. From my birdhouse camera, I watch the white behemoth start to roll forward. It passes the first warning sign, then the second. On her live stream, her followers are eating it up. "You go, Queen," one comment flashes by. "Such a powerful message," says another. She's driving slowly, deliberately, as if performing a sacred ritual. The truck passes the 3rd sign, the 4th. The front wheels are now just inches from the first spike strip, which is nearly invisible in the grass and shadows. I hold my breath. My heart is a drum against my ribs. This is it. On the screen, I see the front of the truck dip ever so slightly. And then the sound comes, perfectly captured by her phone's microphone. Pop, a loud, violent explosion of air. Brenda's serene mask flickers. "What was that?" she says, a line of confusion appearing on her Botoxed brow. Pop. The other front tire goes, followed almost instantly by the rear passenger side tire. As it rolls over the second strip, I'd staggered a few feet behind the first. The truck lurches violently, grinding to a halt. Pop the final tire, 4 for 4. The silence that follows is deafening, broken only by the gentle hissing of air escaping from 4 very expensive, very ruined tires. The serene, enlightened guru is gone. In her place is a creature of pure, unfiltered rage. Her face, inches from her phone's camera, contorts into a snarl. "What the hell?" she screeches, her voice a shrill weapon. That maniac. He booby-trapped his property. Can you believe this? He actually tried to hurt me." Her eyes dart around wildly, and she finally seems to notice the dozen signs she'd so blithely ignored. She zooms her camera in on one of them. Severe tire damage DEVICES in use. This is illegal, she shrieks at her 50,000 viewers. You can't do this, this is assault. I'm calling my lawyer, I'm calling the police. This psycho is going to jail for the rest of his life. The comment section on her live stream has turned from a river of adoration into a raging torrent of chaos. Some are defending her, but many are now pointing out the signs. Brenda, it says right there. One comment starts before being washed away. She fumbles with her phone, her hands shaking with fury. She's not ending the stream. She wants her audience to witness her vindication. It's the single greatest mistake she'll make all day. I sit back in my chair. I take a slow, deep breath. I watch her meltdown for another 30 seconds. A full-blown vehicular temper tantrum broadcast live to the world. Then I reach over to my own desk, pick up the hard drive connected to my camera system, and hit save. I save a screen recording of her entire live stream just in case. Then and only then do I pick up my own phone. I don't dial 911. I dial the direct line for the sheriff's office. Deputy Miller, please, I say calmly to the dispatcher. A moment later, his familiar, weary voice is on the line. Miller. Deputy, it's Leo Davis, from the farm on Old Creek Road. Mr. Davis, what can I do for you? You know that ongoing trespassing issue I've been having with Miss Brenda from the Serenity Woods development. I do, he says, a hint of resignation in his tone. Well, I say, watching her on my screen as she gets out of the truck and starts kicking at one of her flat tires. She's on my property again right now, and I believe I have some definitive new evidence for you. Her vehicle has been immobilized. You can't miss it. It's the white spaceship sitting on 4 flat tires in the middle of my service path. There's a long pause on the other end of the line. I can almost hear the gears turning in his head. I'm on my way, he says, and this time there's no weariness in his voice. There's something else, something that sounds a lot like interest. I gave it 5 minutes before I walked outside. I wanted him to get there first, to find her in the full throes of her meltdown. I walked calmly, my own phone in my pocket, recording audio. I didn't approach her. I just stood about 30 feet away, by the corner of my barn, and watched the show. She was pacing back and forth like a caged animal, still screaming into her phone at whoever was on the other end, presumably her lawyer. The Cybertruck looked ridiculous, sagging on its rims, a wounded beast of hubris. I don't care what the signs say, Richard, she was yelling. He can't do this. This is a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. I want him arrested. I want his farm. I want. Her tirade was cut short by the crunch of gravel as Deputy Miller's cruiser pulled up. He got out slowly, his face a perfect mask of neutrality. Ma'am, Mr. Davis, he said, his eyes taking in the scene. The crippled truck, the forest of warning signs, and Brenda, who looked like she was about to spontaneously combust. Officer, thank God, Brenda shrieked, rushing towards him. Arrest that man, he's a menace. He laid a trap for me. He destroyed my vehicle. It's a $120,000 truck. Miller held up a hand, stopping her in her tracks. Ma'am, please calm down. Let's just figure out what happened here. He turned to me. Mr. Davis. Deputy, I said with a nod. As you can see, Miss Brenda drove onto my property again despite numerous verbal warnings, a cease and desist letter which she signed for, a chain-link fence which she cut, and well, all these signs. I gestured to the nearest one. Miller walked over and read the sign carefully. Then he walked to the next one, and the one after that. He then knelt and looked at the spike strip, still embedded in her front tire. So you're telling me, ma'am, he said, turning back to Brenda, his voice dangerously quiet, that you saw these signs and proceeded to drive onto the property anyway. Brenda's face flushed a blotchy red. Those signs are illegal. You can't just put spikes on the ground. He's trying to kill people. Ma'am, these are tire deflation devices, not landmines, Miller said flatly. And as for their legality on private property, after this many posted warnings, he let the sentence hang in the air. He then turned back to me. Mr. Davis, you mentioned a cease and desist letter. I have a copy right here, I said, pulling a folded paper from my back pocket. I also handed him the signed receipt from the certified mail delivery. She signed for it 4 days ago. Miller took the documents and read them. His expression didn't change, but I could see a muscle twitching in his jaw. Brenda, meanwhile, was frantically trying to get her lawyer back on the phone. Richard, Richard, are you there? The police are here and they're not doing anything. You need to talk to them. She thrust her phone towards Deputy Miller. My lawyer wants to speak with you. Miller took the phone. Deputy Miller here. Yes, sir, I understand. No, sir, I'm looking at about 10 very large, very clear signs warning of this exact outcome. Yes, I have the signed receipt for your cease and desist letter right here. Sir, with all due respect, your client is the one who knowingly trespassed, and he paused, listening. Okay, I understand your position. He handed the phone back to Brenda. Your lawyer has disconnected the call. The look on Brenda's face was a sight to behold. The blood drained from it, leaving her looking pale and shocked. The abandonment was total. Her legal shield had just evaporated. But she stammered. Now, Miss Brenda, Miller continued, his voice all business. Here's what we have. We have a clear case of repeated trespassing. We have willful destruction of property, related to the fence Mr. Davis reported last week. And now we have this. You, on his property, after being formally warned not to be, with your vehicle disabled by a legally posted and warned of security device. He pulled out his notepad. And Mr. Davis here, he said, looking at me, has also destroyed your property. 4 of your tires and these spike strips, which are now ruined. It seems to me we have criminal charges to file here. Brenda's eyes lit up with a flicker of hope. Exactly, charge him. Miller looked at her, his gaze unwavering. Miss Brenda, you are being charged with criminal trespass and criminal mischief. Mr. Davis, are you prepared to give a statement regarding the value of the spike strips she just destroyed by driving over them? It took a full 10 seconds for the reality of his words to penetrate her consciousness. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. What, you're charging me? Yes, ma'am, Miller said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. As I said before, this used to be a civil matter. Your actions have now made it a criminal one. Please put your hands behind your back. The final, sputtering embers of her rage and entitlement were extinguished, replaced by a wave of sheer, panicked disbelief. But the true beauty of it all, her phone was still in her hand, and it was still streaming. Her 50,000 followers, plus the thousands more who had undoubtedly joined to see the drama, had just watched her get called out by her lawyer, charged by the police, and put in handcuffs. They had a front row seat for the complete and total implosion of Brenda Serenity living. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. The clip of her arrest went viral before the tow truck even arrived to haul away the Cybertruck. Someone had cross-referenced her live stream with my camera footage, which I provided to the police and, through Arthur, to one very interested local news reporter. The story was everywhere. Eco-influencer's ugly meltdown after being busted for trespassing. Serenity Woods founder arrested in land dispute. Her carefully cultivated brand of peace, love, and light was incinerated overnight. The hypocrisy was too blatant, too perfectly captured on video, for even her most devoted followers to ignore. Her social media was a graveyard. Her sponsors dropped her in a matter of hours. The investors in Serenity Woods, seeing their brand now associated with a public train wreck, pulled their funding. The entire project collapsed within a month. Brenda ended up pleading no contest to the charges. She had to pay a hefty fine and restitution for the fence and my spike strips. The civil suit she threatened never materialized. Arthur told me her lawyer had advised her that given the mountain of evidence, she'd be lucky to escape without having to pay for my legal fees. But my victory wasn't in her downfall, it was in the silence. The blessed, unbroken quiet that returned to our farm. No more electric hum. No more unwelcome visitors. No more looking over my shoulder. A few weeks later, I was out in the garden with Maya. The new lavender was taking root, and the gravel path was smooth and level again. She was showing me a caterpillar she'd found on a tomato leaf, her face alight with the pure, uncomplicated joy of a child at peace in her own backyard. She looked up at me, her eyes clear and bright. The lady in the white truck isn't coming back, is she, Daddy? I knelt down beside her, the smell of damp earth and mint filling my senses. I put my hand over hers. No, sweetie, I said, she's not coming back ever. She gave me a smile that was worth more than all the real estate in the world. In that moment, I wasn't an engineer or a soldier. I was just a father who had kept his promise. I had defended my daughter's sanctuary. And I had learned that sometimes, The strongest fences aren't made of wire or wood, but of resolve. They are the boundaries you draw around the things you love, and the unwavering decision that you will not let anyone cross them.